Hey, before I get started, I want to have you just give you an update on my wife, Kim. She had a hip replacement surgery on Tuesday. And I know you've been praying and wondering. And I just wanted to give you a quick update. Of course, Tuesday afternoon had the surgery. She was up walking, had 50 steps in, that day. Thursday, she kind of recuperated Wednesday. And then Thursday, the rehab guy came in to do her, hopefully, the last rehab before she leaves the hospital. And he comes and he gets her out of bed. It's about 9 in the morning, 10 in the morning, like that. And she's walking around the bed, and he's got her walker, and the guy says, "Now this is going to be different because right now you're all hopped up on pain medication. It'll be different, once that's gone." And I go, "She's not on pain medication right now. They took the IV pain medication away an hour ago, and she hasn't taken anything since then." And he gave me one of those looks, and then he gets her out in the hallway, and she's working on step climbing and little things like that, and when he gets done, he says, "Well, you're doing great. Good luck with you. Let me know if you need anything." And he walks away. We're out in the middle of the hallway. And so I walk her back in, and we get her settled in the room. And the nurse comes in, and she's going, "Okay, I've never seen a rehab person just turn somebody loose like that." Says they always walk them back in and put them in the bed and make sure they're okay. Said he is so confident how you're doing. He just said, "You're good." And so we live, our bedroom is upstairs. She's been sleeping upstairs each night. She climbs the stairs in the evening. I shuttle her stuff up, and then in the morning she gets ready, and I shuttle her stuff down, and she's doing great. Some friends had a going away party, because people move from around here, and we went to the going away party for a couple hours yesterday, and so she's doing well. She didn't make it to church today. I'm not sure what that says about her priorities. Other than that, she's doing great. Thanks for all the prayers and concerns and everything else you've done. Really appreciate it. Okay, let's get going. We're going to be in Acts chapter 1 today. If you want to turn on your Bible to that. We'll be digging in there a little bit. Before you get there, let me just give you sort of an update on what's going on as we get to this part of Acts 1. Because if just for the story, now Jesus has already been crucified by the time we get to Acts 1. He's risen from the dead, and it's been a little while. Okay, so I want you to get that picture in your head that he's been there. He's been hanging out with them, his disciples, his closest followers, for a little over a month now. And so what that means is they've gone through the phases of weirdness. Like, I'm sure the very first time they saw, Jesus risen from the dead in his glorified form, it was, they're kind of freaked out just a little bit. But now they've been chilling with him for a month. And so they've gone from the freaked out phase to the, to put it in our terms, the selfie phase. Hey, look, this is me with the resurrected Christ. Isn't that cool? To where now they're so comfortable, they're in the Instagram or Snapchat with filters selfie phase. This is me with the resurrected Christ and bunny ears. Because you can tell, because by the point we get to, they've gotten to the point they're now going back to those pestering questions they ask him. They're annoying him with questions. They've just gotten, you can't get used to anything. They're totally used to hanging out with the resurrected Christ. And so in Acts 1, what's happened is it's just that last little bit, and they're totally comfortable with him, and they're bugging him and pestering him. And so I want to go ahead and read Acts 1 and just read a little bit. Then they gathered around him, and you can tell because this is one of their favorite pester questions. Okay, so they're bringing it out. Then they gathered around him and asked, "Lord, are you at this time going to restore the kingdom to Israel?" He said to them, "It is not for you to know the times or dates the Father has set by his own authority." And we've translated this many, many times. They're saying, "Okay, Jesus, you're doing that whole thing about restoring your kingdom. You're going to restore the kingdom of Israel, right? All right, how about now? How about now? How about now? How about now?" And so this is the favorite pester question. And Jesus he's had enough with them. He's like, "It's not for you to know the times or dates the Father has set by his own authority." In other words, none of your business when I'm restoring the kingdom. Okay, so he's in. And then he comes back with the next phrase. "But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, in all Judea and Samaria, and to the ends of the earth." In other words, here's what I want you to do instead. Now, this is stuff I'm kind of speculating a little bit, but They're comfortable, which means they're going to have questions. And I have this picture in my mind because there's one word in there that we skip. We skip right over this one word, and we don't think about it, but it's a crucial word, and it would have impacted these guys really strongly. And I think the one it would have impacted the most, I'm guessing, was a guy named Simon the Zealot. Simon the Zealot was one of the 12, and being a zealot means he was the ultra-uber patriot. He was pro-Israel. He had Israeli flags on all. His bumper sticker was an Israeli flag. He had them everywhere. He wore them on his everywhere. He's like the ultra-patriot guy, right? He's the one that would slap you during the national anthem if you weren't standing at full attention. He's that guy, okay? And so I kind of picture it this way. I'm sure I'm making up a little bit of it, but I think we might be. This has been their attitude. I can see. Jesus says, "Be my authorities in Jerusalem and all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth." And here's Simon. Yes, Simon. Okay, Jesus, first off, love this plan. This is knockout brilliant plan, Jesus. This is great. I love this. It's like our commission. And I mean, it's a great one, Jesus. It's just a great commission you've got right here. I mean, I love the strategy. We start in Jerusalem. We have that Jerusalem. We have that center hub because you got to have your fob. You got to have the fob in place. And you build the hub right there. And then you go into Judea. So you got the state. Jesus, that's brilliant. And Jesus, I'm going to be honest with you. Being a zealot, 3 years ago, if you'd have said that whole ends of the earth thing, I'd have been a little bit touchy about that, but man, you've shown me, Jesus, over the past 3 years that your love extends to the end of the earth and you want to reach the ends of the earth. So Jesus, I'm loving this Jerusalem and Judea and the ends of the earth thing. I think it's a master plan. I just got one teeny, eensy, minuscule little suggestion for you. How about we put a pin in the Samaria thing for now? Okay, I mean, I understand long term, we probably want to get there, but Jesus, I don't. Those people are weird. Those Samaritans, they worship weird, they act weird, they dress weird, and Jesus, I think I'm speaking for the other 10 guys here. I don't think I'm out of turn here, Jesus. I think all of us would agree that we find that Samaritans make us really, really uncomfortable. And maybe if we wait a generation or two, they'll be less weird. And plus, there's a whole lot of ends of the earth. So, we can focus on that part. And then when the Samaritans get a little less weird, we'll bring that back off the plan. How do you think, Jesus? You think it's a good idea? Because I think that's a great idea. I think it keeps the essence of your amazing strategy, but it just tweaks it just a little bit because, like I said, Jesus, we're really, really uncomfortable with those Samaritans. And I imagine Jesus looking at him and saying, Simon, you remind me of one of the most famous Old Testament prophets. You really do. One of the heroes, one of the ones everybody knows. Just, Simon, you are so like him. Because I remember the father and I were talking to this prophet years and years ago, and we're telling him, we want you to go to this certain place and reach this certain people that's outside of Israel. And he looks at us, and he says, God, I understand the people of Nineveh they wouldn't hurt, but they make me really uncomfortable. How about this, God? Instead of me going to Nineveh where the uncomfortable people are, what if I go farther away to the ends of the earth and I'll go to Spain and I'll reach the people of Spain? How's that plan sound, God? Does that sound okay with God? And Jesus looks at Simon. You remember that story? Yes. Remember how that turned out? Well, yeah, he ended up in a whale. Yeah, that's the one, Jonah. Yeah, Jonah ended up in a whale because I said go to Nineveh. He said that'll make me uncomfortable. Let me go to Spain. So we just thought, me and the father, we're kind of joking around a little bit. We thought it was a hoot. We'll show you what uncomfortable means. And we'll put you inside a whale and let you be whale vomit. And then you'll understand what uncomfortable means. So Simon, I appreciate your contribution, but we're going to go ahead and leave Samaria in the Great Commission, even if it makes you uncomfortable. I talk a lot about the trip to Cambodia and all our Cambodia ministry, and there's lots of stories I tell. There's a piece of one story I don't tell, because we tend not to tell stories that don't make us look at least okay. if there's a story in your life that makes you look like a real jerk or an idiot or a loser, you tend not to include that in the story. You ever do that? And so we were getting ready to go to Cambodia a couple years ago. And somebody canceled who was actually competent and qualified to go. And they needed somebody to fill an airplane seat in a hotel room. And they said, Steve can do it. And so I got recruited, and I went with them. And we're getting ready to go. We're getting really close, and we're going over the itinerary for when we get there. And I'll never forget, we're in one of the houses of one of the people, and Steve Schiffman, who was leading the team, he said, okay, here's our itinerary. Now, here's what we're going to do, because if you don't know, our Cambodia team worked with children, street kids in Phnom Penh who were in danger of being affected by human trafficking or sexual abuse of some kind. And we're in the room, and he said, here's what's going to happen, though. He says, Hard Places actually has two ministries. They have one ministry where they minister to the small children who are at risk. They've also discovered there are lots of guys, lots of young adult men, who get lured into the brothel, the sex trade, not as slaves, but they just are lured into working in brothels as male prostitutes. And Hard Places has developed a ministry to try to help those people get out of the brothel industry. They bring them out. They try to teach them other skills, other job opportunities, so that they can leave that part of life behind and go into something that's less exploitive and is better, healthier for them. We try to introduce them to Christ. And I didn't tell anybody this, but I remember sitting there going, you say we're going to meet with them the first morning? Can I miss that meeting? I'll go that afternoon and work with the kids and stuff, even though I'm not really all that good with kids. But can I skip that? Because I am really, really uncomfortable working with young men who either have just recently left working in brothels or might still be working in brothels. That makes me really uncomfortable. Of course, I do have enough whatever to not say that out loud. I didn't say that to anybody, but I thought it really loud. And of course, I couldn't get out of it because there's no way not to look like a schmuck. So we went to the meeting with those guys. And I'd like to say that I had this eureka moment, this amazing experience, and I didn't. It was a nice time. The guys shared their testimonies, and a lot of the people were really moved, and it was cool. It was nice. It wasn't earth-shaking. But as we ended the meeting, my brain got to working. It's a terrible thing to do. And I remembered, most of our trip people are going to be working with small children the whole time. I'm not good working with small children. It's not my zone. It's not a strength for me. I'm good working with adults. And I just published a book called Faith in Your Own Handwriting, which is about discipleship, and it's aimed at people in the 18 to 25, 30-year age range, which was everybody in that room. So I walked up to one of the leaders and said, hey, kids aren't my specialty, but adult discipleship is something I've got some skills at. What do you think about me working with these guys this week instead of the kids? And I spent most of the week shuttling back and forth and worked primarily with those people and the teachers and their teachers, and I trained them on how to do discipleship for that week. And the last day we were with that group, the head of that ministry, I forget her real name, they called her Om, which means great aunt in Khmer, and she took me to lunch, and we're having lunch, and I'm telling her that story. And she said, why did you do that? And I said, I have learned that God works greatest in my life when I move toward my discomfort. And I got to thinking about that afterwards, that it seemed like in my life that God does his best work when I move into my discomfort zone. And I got to thinking, I wonder if that's just me. Is that just a Steve thing? Because I'm pretty weird. And I'm going, well, what about the Bible? In the Bible, how does God use people? Does he use them in their comfort or their discomfort most of the time? And I started the front. Okay, who's the first guy who really starts the whole Jewish thing? Who's the founder? That'd be Abraham. Called Abram early, then changed to Abraham. And God goes up to Abraham and says, Abraham, here's what I want you to do. I want you to leave your city, and I want you to leave your family. You can bring your wife and a nephew. I want you to leave everything else behind, and I want you to go west. I'll let you know when you get to the right spot. Just start moving that way. Comfortable or uncomfortable? Uncomfortable. Moses, I need to rescue all the Israelites out of Egypt. And I need you to spend 40 years working as a shepherd in the wilderness to get you ready. 40 years, shepherd, wilderness. There's not a phrase in there I like. I need a king, God says, for the nation of Israel. Not a king like the people want, but a king after my heart. So I'm gonna get a king ready for this. So he calls up this guy named David and gets him ready. And by the age of like 20, David is the number one general in the army of Israel. He's the most popular man in the kingdom. He is, while not legally the heir apparent to the king, he really is. He's the guy that if the king got struck by lightning, they would all make David be king. And he's living in the palace. He's married to the king's daughter. And God kicks him out of the palace and makes him live as a vagabond on the run from the king who's trying to kill him for years and years and years. Comfortable, uncomfortable. Prophet Isaiah, God comes to the prophet Isaiah because I want to make you a prophet. Just to let you know up front, you're going to preach for the rest of your life, and nobody's going to listen to you. Comfortable, uncomfortable. Daniel, here's what I want to do with you. Here's my plan for you, Daniel. Daniel, you're probably from a wealthy family in Israel. I'm going to take you out of the family that you grew up in. I'm going to take you to a place where everything they do is strange. A lot of it is against your morals. You're going to Las Vegas to spend the rest of your life. And you're going to work in a casino because you're going to work with the people. You're going to be in positions of power. And you're going to do this from the time you're a teenager until you're in your 80s. You're going to spend your entire life in this place with people who make you uncomfortable. Mary, got a plan for you, girl. How do you feel about illegitimate birth? Because for the rest of your life, everybody is going to assume that your firstborn child is illegitimate. You can find that in the book of John, the Gospel of John. They considered her that the rest of her life. Comfortable, uncomfortable. Paul, we got to change that Saul name. You know that group you've been persecuting? Yeah, I want you to switch teams. You're going from the Yankees to the Red Sox. Comfortable, uncomfortable. Jesus, eternal, spotless Son of God, living in the heavens with the Father. I want to move you to earth with all those screwed up people. I want you to live among them, rub elbows with them, love them and argue with them. And then, I want you to get crucified. And after you've risen from the dead, one of your closest followers is going to say, hey, Jesus, why don't we put a pin in this whole Samaria thing? Comfortable, uncomfortable. See? Sensing a theme? I've been around church for a long time, and people frequently go on mission trips. You ever been on a mission trip? There's a Can I tell you what's going to happen when you get back from the mission trip? If you ever go on a mission trip, if you've ever been on one, this is universal. This happens every time. They bring the group in, and this happens with our teams, any church in the world. This is how the team does. They get done, and they bring them up in front of the church to do a presentation on what happened. There's 2 parts to the presentation. Always 2 parts, always the same 2 parts, always in the same 2 order. Nobody ever plans it this way, but this is exactly how it works every single time. Phase 1 of the presentation. Have you been to one of these presentations? What is it? Boy, that sucked. That was hard. They didn't have the right kind of water. They didn't have this. They didn't have that. It was too hot. It was too cold. People didn't speak the language. It tore my heart out. It was the most depressing place I've ever been in my life. There's this, half the presentation is, man, that sucked. We were so uncomfortable. And the second half of the presentation, look at all the amazing things God did. Well, you've been around a while, and that's it. That is the exact description of every one of those you have ever been to in your life. It sucked, and God did amazing stuff. See, here's my first point. You're not going to like it, and you're not going to like the rest of them. God's calling is most powerful when we're least comfortable. God's calling is most powerful when we're least comfortable. And for many of us, I would, and I don't know how I mean this, but I would say God can never use some of us because we avoid discomfort religiously. I look out at the churches in our nation, and they worship comfort. And they're not doing anything meaningful for God. First time I gave, this first part up to here, I've given it like 3 times at different situations. The first time I presented that little story, I was at a denominational meeting, and there were about, 30, 40 churches represented there. And I gave them a story that they could all relate to, and some of you have been in places and you can relate to this story too, where the church is getting ready to do something. We're getting ready to we're going to change something, we're going to reach out, we're going to risk something, we're going to do something, and there's a meeting going on to discuss it. And one person raises their hand. We'll call him Simon. And Simon says, it seems like a good idea, but you ready for the words? You've heard it. If you've been in church stuff, you've heard it. I'm not comfortable with that. And we shut it down. We say, we shouldn't do that. Well, if you're not comfortable with that, we shouldn't do it. I don't know how many times I've been in a meeting with people. Our church tends to blow past that one pretty quick. But most churches, that's the end. That's the end of the discussion. Somebody's not comfortable. And the reality is, if you look in the Bible and the way God works normally, if you're not comfortable, that means we're off to a good start. I'm not talking if you're discomfortable because you think it's sinful. I'm not going there at all. I'm talking about doing something for God and you are uncomfortable. That is usually step 1 in God doing something really, really cool. You guys saw Kristen get up and she did the little thing about the children's ministry. And nervous is not even the right word. She was petrified. She's been petrified for weeks. Matter of fact, we've been saying it's going to happen in the next little while. And I finally told him a week and a half ago, rip the Band-Aid off, make her do it now. Because she's just getting worse, more and more nervous. And she was right. Don't ever tell me what makes you uncomfortable. Because there's something about moving with your giftedness. I'm not talking just random stuff. Moving with your giftedness and your passion into an area of discomfort. Because God takes that discomfort and He does amazing things. He does it for individuals. He does it for churches. And let's keep digging. Because when I say embracing discomfort, well, embracing Jesus' calling means embracing life's messes. Embracing life's calling means embracing life's messes. I told you about Simon the Zealot. Remember the guy that had raised his hand and everything? The guy who's the ultra-patriot, the ultra-jingoist, the whole thing. Jesus picked him for one of his 12. Before that, you know who he picked before he picked Simon the Zealot? Dude named Matthew. Matthew was a tax collector. You know what that meant? He was a traitor to his nation. He was Benedict Arnold. There are 12 guys on this team. One of them is an uber patriot. One of them is a traitor. How do you think that went? I'm sure they never got in any fights at all. Matter of fact, if you look around at the people Jesus brought together, he brought together these messed up people who were all messed up in different ways, and he brought them and he stuck them in the same room and said, let's change the world. And he embraced the mess. Matter of fact, Jesus' entire life was embracing the mess. Like we said, he starts in heaven. He comes to earth where everybody's screwed up. And then he doesn't stay in his room all the time. He's walking around letting people who are unclean touch him. He's touching them. Jesus walked up and touched a leper on purpose. You don't do that. Jesus sat there and watched while a hooker washed his feet. You don't do that. That's getting too close to the mess. That's getting mess on you. Wait. I shouldn't say you don't do that, because if Jesus did that, that means we should do that. He goes and talks to a Samaritan woman who the Samaritans thought was dirty. And Jesus was never afraid of what the religious people thought. Because all of us pursue comfort. It's our number one goal. It's the one thing we strive for. More than anything on earth, the one thing we strive for is comfort. I'm not making that up. That's what you look at yourself, you look deep in your heart. The number one thing you pursue, if you're not careful, is comfort. We're all drawn to that. And religion by its nature ends up being about comfort. It's about making the faithful comfortable. I have one of the things that I've had to come to grips with in my life is I tend not to do that. I tend not to make people around me comfortable. I tend to push them into their discomfort. I tend to say things that make them uncomfortable from the front. I tend to look at issues that are uncomfortable. And I've said this. I've said this a lot recently. I think we could have a bigger church if I made everybody comfortable. I don't think God would do as much stuff through us, but I think we could have a bigger church. I still think God's not done making us into something spectacular to accomplish all he wants to do. But we're going to be uncomfortable embracing messes along the way. And if you are really, really, really avergent to messes, get over it. Because God's call on your life is to embrace the messes and be like Jesus, who was always going around embracing messes and touching the wrong people. And by the way, notice I did not say allowing for messes, embracing messes. And if we're going to be God's church, we have to be God's church embracing messes, embracing messy people. And by the way, you know what that really means? Because we all know we're screwed up. We all know we're messy. It means embracing people whose messes are different than ours. Because what we do is we embrace the messes that we're comfortable with because we have that mess. I'm a mess in this area. You're a mess in the same area. Let's get together and be comfortable in our messiness. Let's bring in some people who are messy other ways. It gets worse. Because living with discomfort includes choosing to risk. That's almost worse than discomfort, isn't it? But again, let's go back. Let's go back to Abraham. Was there any risk involved in leaving everything he had and everybody he knew except just a few family members and heading west? Was there any risk involved in that? Was there any risk when God came to Mary and said, Mary, I want you to give birth to the Messiah. You're going to be pregnant out of wedlock. Oh, and by the way, occasionally this culture, we still do stone pregnant women to death if they're not married. Any risk? Paul, I'm going to send you out. Yeah, you're going to reach lots of people. You are going to get stoned and left for dead at least once. I've told you guys this. Last week I mentioned it. On Mother's Day, of course, I did a sermon on homosexuality, and a guy got in contact with me. He's a gay former chaplain, and he has a podcast, and he wanted me to be on his podcast. I didn't tell you the advice I got, because from both sides, not the people who know me bad. Well, some people know me really well. They were like, Steve, that's dangerous. Because his audience is primarily LGBTQ people and atheists. That's the audience that I'd be speaking to. It's kind of risky to talk to people who disagree with you at that level. But also, a lot of church people, not our church, but we're like, Steve, you got to be careful. Some of our church, Steve, you got to be really careful. You say one wrong thing, you're going to get in trouble. The guy himself said, you're probably going to get in trouble for this. And I was like, okay, what should I do? What should I do? Okay, you'll be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, welcome to Samaria. By the way, if you want to know how to do this, if you want to know how to talk to a group of people who are hostile to your beliefs and still present the good news in a way that is actually cool, and Chris Pratt won an award from MTV. MTV is not the gospel network. That's not Messiah Television Network. That's not it. Okay? He won like a generation award. And he got up there and YouTube this, and I've watched it numerous times just watching what he did. Because he had 4 minutes, and he got the gospel in a way that didn't chase him off, made him laugh most of the time, and I'm just sitting there going, I don't know how much time you spent on that, dude. I don't know how many people you had help you write that. It was something. And a lot of times, hey, you're going to talk in front of the MTV crowd, just, say you're loved. He started simple, worked his way up to sharing the gospel. It was in 4 minutes. It's awesome. You'll be my witnesses. It's risky. By the way, if you want to hear the podcast, I'm letting people hear it. It's if you just email me, steve@spoutsprings.org, I'll send you the link. Or if you do Chappie's Musings, you might find it. Just Google that. It's over an hour. It's risk. Saying my calling is to choose risk. Okay. I've been not deceiving you, but I've been hiding one crucial truth from you the whole time. I've not made this connection. I'm not hiding it, but I haven't made a connection to you. Because when I talk about choosing to be uncomfortable, when I talk choosing risk and choosing to embrace messes, there's another word I'm meaning, but I just haven't used it yet because I wanted to hold it off, and I want to give it to you now. Because your willingness to be uncomfortable for God reflects your level of faith in God. This is actually a faith issue. And let's see, is faith important? Is faith important? Oh yeah, the author of Hebrews put it this way. He said, without faith, it's impossible to please God. Without faith, it's really, really no. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. That verse jumped out at me about a decade ago, and it just changed. You ever have a verse that you've known for years, and you finally read it, and God points out the nuance that you're supposed to get, and it just changes your life? When I read that verse, like I said, it's been over a decade ago. I read that verse, and I went, holy cow. If without faith, it's impossible to please God, what does that mean if I never allow myself to be in a position where faith is required? If I never let myself get to a position where I need to show faith, what is that saying about my ability to please God? Steve, could you go back to talking about that zealot guy? That was a lot more fun. Let me ask the question, because I know you guys, this is me talking to me with this question. But some of you guys are unfortunately like me. Do I trust God, trust that God can use me when I'm not in control? Do I trust that God can use me when I'm not in control? Because that's what we're talking about here. We're talking moving from an area where I feel in control, where I feel safe, into an area where I'm not in control, where the results are up to God, where the only one who can make this stuff happen is God. Am I comfortable? You ever get in that situation? We get in that situation, right? Where suddenly you're out of control. And what do you do when you're out of control? You grab back for control. You say, this is what I'm good at. And I believe in leading with your strength. I believe in doing what you're best at as much as you can. I believe God gifts us for that reason. But it also means taking that gift and going someplace that you're not really used to going to. It means Kristen getting up here and doing, this is cool, doing the talk about children's ministry. And we've been pushing her for ever since I hired her, because I could see in her. God shows me things in people that they've got. I see it. She's got the ability to be in front of people and do little things like that. I'm not talking necessarily a speaker, but she can rev you guys up about children's ministry. She's got that gift. And she didn't see it, and I'm pushing her, and she's mad at me. And after the first service, and she did it, she goes, I think I could do announcements. Push. Out of the comfort zone, into the risk place. Living with faith. And I have to look at myself. This is one of the most powerful verses in Psalms, in the book Bible, actually. It says, search me, God. Know my heart. Test me. Know my anxious thoughts. What's anxious? Worrying. It means I'm in a position where I don't feel in control, or I'm afraid to let myself go into a position where I'm not in control. That's what anxious is, right? Anxious means I'm either in a position where I'm not in control, or I'm on the edge of going, or afraid I'm going to go into a position where I'm not in control. That's anxious, right? So God, look in me, find anxious thoughts. Now listen to this. Now my anxious thoughts, see if there's any offensive way in me. Hebrew poetry is about parallelism. The parallel to anxious is what? Offensive. When we choose not to have faith, when we choose to let ourselves be anxious because we're not in control, when we choose not to take risks, when we choose not to embrace messes, when we choose to be comfortable above all else, God views that as offensive. Okay? And lead me in the way everlasting, which is a way of faith, not anxiety. That's where God wants us to go. That's where God wants us to be as a church, where God wants you to be as a person. Let me give you one little disclaimer. Let's just say for a second that you're getting this. You're saying, okay, God, I need to look for stresses. I need to look for ways to move out of my comfort zone into discomfort. And let me say this right now. That varies from person to person, what that means to go to uncomfortable. For me, uncomfortable was in an unair-conditioned building in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. For a lot of you, because God's never gotten you to take a step, for a lot of you, a step of discomfort is saying, you know what, I have the ability to work with children, but I'm afraid to sign up for it. And that's a step of faith out of your comfort zone into your discomfort zone. You're comfortable coming in here and sitting on Sunday mornings. You're comfortable watching online, but you're not comfortable stepping. And you say, I don't think I should be a first impressions person because I'm not comfortable. I could never play on the worship team or sing on the worship team because I'm not comfortable. I have the gifts. I have the talents. I'm not comfortable using it in front of people. I'm not comfortable working with kids in a church setting. I'm not comfortable. But let's say you've bought into that, the earlier stuff, that you recognize you need to be stepping into your discomfort. You need to stop with this whole I'm not comfortable with that and say that might be a marker of where I need to go, not a place to stay away from. Let me tell you what will happen after you do that. Because when stress comes, we tend to regress. When we hit stress, we tend to regress. Because you'll step out in faith on something. We have this happen at the church. It's perfectly normal and natural, and I don't really get mad as long as everybody just acknowledges. Like when we step out and you say, okay, we're going to change something at church, and you're going, okay, and then it gets a little hard, and what you want to do is go backwards. Right? We tried changing something, and it made my life a little, and I'm uncomfortable. So what I want to do is I want to go back to the old way of doing it. I want to go back to when I was comfortable. I want to find, like in the old days with computers, you might still have them, I don't know, a reset point where you'd save all your data, and then if you got in trouble, you'd reset your computer to, August 3rd, 2016, and everything would be okay because it was okay on that day. You remember August 3rd, that was cool. I reset my computer to there, and we want to reset our lives to that. We want to go back to the way we used to do it. We want to go back to the old stuff. And all of us face that sometimes because we get stressed. Things are getting uncomfortable. We're doing things that are different, and we want to go, can I reset it? I don't want to reset it all the way back. I don't want to go back to my beginning. But can I reset it to back 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Can I reset to that? Because when we get stressed, we want to regress. But can I show you one more verse? Some of you guys love this verse, and I want you to see it. It's in Isaiah. It says, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And through the rivers, they shall not overwhelm you. When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, and the flames shall not consume you. See my favorite word in there? I highlighted it. I made this a really easy question for you. Through. It doesn't say when you come to the waters and go around them. You go through the waters. When you come to the river and don't build a bridge, but you wade right through the bridge, the water. And when the fire shows up, you don't wait for it to die down. You don't wait for it to burn itself out. You walk through it. You ready? You ready? Are you ready? In this verse, the only path to blessing is through the trial. The only path to blessing is through the discomfort. The only path to the blessing is through the risk. When I say I want what's God's best for you, you know what that doesn't mean? It doesn't mean I want you to be comfortable. Because I don't. I don't mean I want you to be miserable. I don't mean I want you selling everything you have and living in a cardboard box and, eating cardboard and water. But it means there need to be areas in your life where you are allowing God to make you uncomfortable. It could be because you're thinking through things that are challenging and hard for you to think through. It was funny. We were at the going away party yesterday. And somebody said something about, that sermon on homosexuality was very timeless because my nephew is homosexual and he just announced he's in a serious relationship. And, we're going to have to make a decision probably about a wedding. And somebody who hadn't been at the service, this was so fun, the person who hadn't been there said, well, what did Steve say about whether or not you should go to a gay wedding? And the person went, he didn't. He didn't say. He just told me I need to start thinking about it. I need to start processing things. I need to start making myself uncomfortable in the things that I think about, the things that I do, the way that I live as a Christian in this culture. Because you can daydream all you want. The reality is you're going through the water. You're going through the river. And you're going to go through the flame. The question is, as I'm going through the water, as I'm going across the river, as I'm walking through the flames, am I choosing to embrace the discomfort and look for what God wants to do in and through me in the fire, in the water, in the flame? Or am I just trying to see how fast I can get back to comfortable? Aren't you glad you came? Let me give you one more discomfort. This is one for, actually this is one for those of you who don't have a relationship with Christ yet. Because Christianity starts with discomfort. It starts with one of the most discomforting things we can do as a human. Anybody ever done a trust fall? I haven't. I will not. I don't care. I don't trust any of you enough. I have a thing about heights and a thing about falling. I'm opposed to both. Do you know why at those retreats they have you do trust falls? Because it goes against your nature. Because we don't trust people. We want to earn things ourselves. We want to be able to look, and that's true when it comes to God. When it comes to God, what all of us want is to come before God and look at all this. God, here's all the stuff I did. That's enough, right? That's good, right? That's what we want. We want to build our own little salvation wall that we can present to God as a monument and say, look, I've earned my way into your presence. I've earned my way to a relationship with you. And Jesus says, yeah, that's not going to work. Fall backwards. Yeah, just do that. When my dad was a kid, he had a bunch of big family. And he and one of his brothers had his system worked out in a crowd because believe it or not, there are people in my family who are hams. And his brother would tap him on the shoulder. When he tapped him on the shoulder, my dad would just stiffen up and fall straight backwards. And then his brother would catch him. Until that last time. Somebody else tapped him on the shoulder and they stopped doing that anymore. But that's really what Christianity says. Christianity says you cannot build a monument to your own achievements that's big enough to get you into God, to prove God, to make God love you, to do any of that stuff. You can't do that. The only way you can get in is Jesus holds his hands right here and says, trust me. We say, I cannot achieve a relationship with God on my own under any circumstances, and therefore my only valid option is to trust you. And that's uncomfortable. If you're ready to be uncomfortable with Jesus, at the end of the service, grab one of these blue bags. Somebody's trained will take 10 minutes. They'll walk you through the contents of the bag. They'll show you how to have that relationship with Christ that's built not on what you do, but on trusting him. And the cool thing is, as you learn to trust him, he just teaches you to trust him more and more and more and more. And he does more and more and more in and through you as you learn to live more and more and more uncomfortably. Matter of fact, because after salvation, after you accept Christ, what's the first thing we always say to do here? Baptism. What's baptism? Trust fall with water. I liked it. So if you've never been baptized, let us know. First Wednesday of every month we do baptisms. If some company you want to pray about it, there's a cross right over in the corner. During this next song, you just slip over there and pray about anything you want to pray about. Maybe God's spoken to you in an area where you need to step up your trust, step into discomfort. If you want to pray with somebody, we've got people lined up around the outside of the auditorium. Glad to pray with you. If you want to take communion to remind yourself of what Christ did for you, there's a communion station there and there's one back there. Also, step classes. We're taking July off from those, but first Sunday night in August, I'll be teaching the very first step class. Be ready for that at 6 o'clock. All right. Anybody challenged today? Let me leave you with one nice and challenging question. You can ask yourself this on your way out. Are you more focused on advancing God's kingdom or maintaining your comfort level? Because you cannot do the things God wants to do in your life and through your life if you're more committed to comfort than you are to him.